caught in that stuck thinking due to perfectionism, I see you, always striving, pushing hard to be that perfect version of yourself, but it feels like you're running a race with no finish line, right? Stick with me and Dr. Eddie O'Connor as we discuss how to step off that treadmill and into a life where trying your best is good enough and perfect just means being you. Welcome back to Connection Over Perfection, your go-to podcast for real talk about the things that make us tick. Today, I'm excited to bring to the mic Dr. Eddie O'Connor, a mastermind in the field of peak performance. He's not just any expert, he's a certified consultant through the Association for Applied Sport Psychology with a significant role in the United States Olympic Committee Sport Psychology Registry. Dr. Eddie has carved a path through the dense forest of mental challenges, helping not just athletes, but performers and professionals from all walks of life to rise above the mundane and find their best selves. His work isn't just a job, it's his calling, and he's been recognized across media outlets from Fox News to Sirius XM, not to mention his powerful course, The Psychology of Performance, which has been changing lives one insight at a time. But for me, what really stood out about Dr. Eddie is his genuine approach to conversation. He doesn't shy away from the tough topics, he welcomes them. He's here to offer a perspective that's grounded in years of experience, but open to new ideas and different viewpoints. So let's get settled in for a conversation that's sure to challenge our thoughts and maybe even change the way we approach our daily performance. Dr. Eddie, thank you so much for being here.
Hey, thanks, Amber. And thanks for that wonderful introduction. That was really shining on me. I really appreciate it. And you're right. I am looking forward to the challenges and the different thinking than what's out there. So I'm excited to get started.
Yeah, definitely. It's one of my favorite things to highlight people, especially amazing people who work so hard to help others. I love taking the opportunity to really let them shine for a moment and have the spotlight. So I'm glad that it touched you. Could you give us just a snapshot of your journey and the defining moments that kind of led you to where you are?
Sure. So I seem to always be interested in psychology for whatever reason. I remember I grew up in the Bronx and there's a fair amount of fighting and stuff like that that goes on, but even my friend enemies like would actually come to me with their problems. And so we'd be fighting in the schoolyard one day and then I'd be walking with my arm around them the next day talking about whatever was stressing them out in elementary school. Got through high school and figured out what to want to do and like was immediately drawn to psychology. So kind of always knew that. I was reading Freud's analysis of dreams for fun. So there was something there. And that overlapped a little bit with me being an athlete, or at least trying to be an athlete. I was never very good, but I had a very strong athletic identity. And the two merged in my senior year, where I tried to get past 2:10 in the half mile, which isn't great, but it was a milestone that was really important to me. And I kept coming across 2:11, 2:11, 2:11, but I was crossing the finish line not tired. And it was really kind of like frustrating, like what's going on? There's this mental block that I had had. And it wasn't until after I went to school and everything else, I figured it out later that what was going on for me was that my identity as an athlete was so important. My worth and my value somehow were tied up in what I was accomplishing and what I was doing. And I had a long history of accomplishment for love and worth, but that's another story. But it particularly came out in this. And then I'd come across the finish line and I would throw up as if I had given my full effort, but also immediately aware of that, oh, if I just ran faster, I would have hit my goal. This happened over and over and over again. It wasn't until afterwards that I discovered that it was my unconscious mind that was so afraid of losing because it would have threatened my identity that it built in an excuse that, oh, I just didn't try hard enough. I didn't really fail. I have a reason. And I could, if I just ran faster like I could, I'd be okay. Now, in hindsight, I'm saying this out loud and it's ridiculous because running a 2:11 is a 2:11, you still failed objectively, but emotionally there's this big disconnect. And I don't know if anybody out there feels it too. Like you do things that you can't believe you're doing, you don't know why you're doing it, you're not choosing to do these things, but it keeps happening. And this is the power of our unconscious and these core beliefs and things that we have. And for me, it was just my mind's way of protecting me from failure by building
Mm.
in an excuse that ultimately was sabotaging my athletic career. Because honestly, if I was able to get past that, I don't know, could I have run a 2:05? Could I have like really hit 1:59, which would be like the big marker? My training suggests that it would have been a heck of a lot closer because I was a great practice athlete. Now, let me tell you, it ends well. I ran a 2:09 in my last race. I'm not going to believe that the coach was a little fast with the thumb. I'm going to actually think and believe that I ran the 2:09. But so anyway, so I was always intrigued by that. And so anyway, I went to school for clinical psychology, or rather, for psychology in college, and then found out that sports psychology was a thing that I could work with athletes. And so when I went to get my clinical degree, I wanted to study what athletes suffered from the most. So I've got a specialization in injury and rehabilitation and performance anxiety, perfectionism. Everybody who's a performer, if you care about what you're doing, you're going to have anxiety. And so I've really been blessed to be able to work with those people, not only in sport. So again, if I have non-athletes listening, I work with musicians and artists. And if you're a parent, if you have health, like if you're performing in any area of your life, these principles will apply to you. And I've just been grateful to be able to really step into that space of performance anxiety, perfectionism, inability to handle mistakes, and create safety so that people could embrace them and overcome them to be their best selves.
I think you are speaking to every listener that I have, especially on the
Fantastic.
perfectionism part. We talk about this a lot. It's something that I struggled with my whole life. And I say I'm a perfectionist in recovery. I will never be recovered from it. I will always be working on it. It just seems to show up all the time. So, and that is a huge thing that so many deal with, like you said, not just performers, but, coaches, parents, and just the everyday person deals with that perfectionism. And the word stuck keeps coming up. And I know that we are going to talk about this later, but I think I'm just going to kind of conjure it up now. It feels right. For me, perfectionism can make me feel stuck. And it actually does keep me stuck because it keeps me from moving forward. I get almost like paralyzed. So, in talking about that, I know that you talk about stuck thinking and the trap of supposed to be's that hinders our growth. Can you talk to us a little bit about that?
Oh yeah. So if you guys are listening, I want you to sit down, take out a pen and paper. Like we're gonna hit you with the
I'm
stuff right
ready.
now. And I want to play psychologist with you, Amber, here a moment. And I could even hear as you're talking about perfectionism as if it's a bad thing. And we've
Mm,
been conditioned to kind of be apologetic about how perfectionistic we are because we know that nobody can be perfect and everybody makes mistakes. And that just pisses us off when we hear that as perfectionists.
you're not
Let's
wrong.
be honest, right? I mean, the worst thing that you could say to us, as I too have said, I'm a recovering perfectionist, is that it's this really bad thing. It's gotten a bad rap. So let's highlight why it's a good thing, why everybody should be, and some people should be more perfectionistic. We're striving for excellence. We want everything to be right. There's nothing wrong with that. It doesn't matter that the reality is nobody can be perfect. To strive for it is an admirable thing. Why wouldn't you want everything to go perfectly? From your competition to your grades, to your marriage, to your work, to your relationships. Your heart is one of high quality, of excellence, of wanting to do good to and for others. We want to be perfect in that. So nothing you're going to hear today is going to squash any of that. And when we hear that, oh, mistakes are okay and don't worry about it, it attacks us personally because mistakes are not okay. Again, perfectionists, you're going to get relief from what I'm going to tell you. Mistakes
I'm
aren't
breathing. I'm
okay.
like,
Right? The relief that we feel from that. Because look, if mistakes were okay, people wouldn't be getting fired from their jobs. We wouldn't be getting D minuses on our grades. We wouldn't be yelled at by coaches when we make them. We wouldn't be upset when we lose, right? Because if everybody's making mistakes and that's just the way we live, we'd have a culture where mistakes are routinely forgiven and we still can strive for that, which we'll get to that in a minute. But the idea is mistakes are not okay. That's why they're called mistakes. So
wow.
let's not try to shy it away and be like, oh, we just want to make you feel better. No,
Hmm.
if you make a mistake, you hurt somebody, you've hurt yourself, you're not getting the outcome that you want. And I think a lot of our distress as perfectionists can be relieved if we can just look at it and admit and say, mistakes are not okay. Please don't
Mm.
encourage us and convince us that they're not. Now, so what do we do from there then, right? Okay, well, here's the thing. It's the intolerance of the mistakes that ends up being the problem. Because the reality is that mistakes are made. And even more importantly, and this is the part to really write down, mistakes are an inevitable part of growth and learning. Now, again, everybody's heard this before, but I'm asking you to emotionally connect to this. We have to make these horrible, unpleasant, hurtful mistakes in service of growth in every single area of our life. You had to fall a lot when you were a toddler learning how to walk. You probably swallowed a lot of water trying to learn how to swim. You scuffed your knees falling off a bike. And those things, we were encouraged to make mistakes. Our parents, our, guardians, people were like very, very much encouraging. In our art, we would draw these crappy little drawings and our parents would put it on the refrigerator and celebrate how awesome we were. So when we're young, these mistakes of growing up somewhere between the age of 1 and 5 or 0 and 5, we're encouraged to just like not know anything. We're new on this earth. Everything's new and mistakes are happening and everybody's being reinforced to just, yeah, great. What did you learn from that? Right? Go back to when you were a child. You're not going to remember this, but every time you fell, you learned, oh, I'm putting balance on one side or the other. And you worked out through the mistakes, through telling you what didn't work, what did work so that you could learn how to walk. You did the same thing learning how to ride a bicycle, same thing learning how to swim, to hit a baseball, et cetera, et cetera. So why is it that somewhere around kindergarten, the feedback that we're starting to get starts to become more harsh as mistakes are okay? And I see young kids at 9 and 10, certainly by 13, 14, 15, who are making mistakes and feeling like they should be on the court or the baseball diamond or, making these social relationships and doing things for the first time, and they should be doing it right.
Mm.
That's honestly ridiculous. And why should we at 30 or 40 be doing our parenting perfectly when it's the first time we have a teenager? Or we have this new aspect in our job and the world has changed and it's this social media thing, or this algorithm has changed, or it's this conflict that I've never had before. And this is the first time that I'm doing it and I'm supposed to nail it because I need to be perfect. My friends, it doesn't make any sense. The grace, now, again, those mistakes still hurt your team and might blow up the business deal and your partner's going to be upset. But the grace that we need to have for other people, but particularly for ourselves, and the opportunity to learn from, okay, I didn't do that right. I don't like it. I'm a perfectionist. I don't want it. What is this teaching me? Because if I learn from it, then I get closer to perfection.
And usually I'm really good about seeing this, but I think that I've been so conditioned that perfectionism is bad that I was unable to see the duality that wanting perfectionism isn't bad, but we're still going to make mistakes.
It's the intolerance of those mistakes, which is what's unhelpful. So there are healthy perfectionists who have high athletic strivings. And when they've got low concerns, like perfectionistic concerns, like about doing it exactly right, they're in that healthy space of achievement. Where we struggle and get burned out is when those mistakes end up being this negative evaluation and there's something wrong with us. They're intolerable. That's what
Mm.
leads to the burnout. Is that's again, it's a part of growth. And there's no way to get closer to perfect. I mean, again, if you want to say nobody's perfect, that's not meant to be an excuse. It's just kind of saying that we're striving for something that we'll never have. And that's okay. I mean, nobody ever bats 1,000. Nobody ever shoots 100%. Right? But why wouldn't we strive for that? Why wouldn't we strive for each repetition, each conversation, each work project? Why wouldn't we strive to do it to the very best of our ability? And if we change the definition of when we make mistakes as feedback about how to do it better the next time, we will have a lifetime of growth.
So are you saying basically the concept that I like to say failing forward, right? We're going to fail, but we can use it forward. And really the detriment of perfectionism is when we take on that as view of ourself.
Well, you're bringing up another good point, yeah, which I haven't gotten into, but I'll segue into that. So your first part is absolutely correct. In that relationship, instead of it being an evaluation of who you are, it's an indication of where to go. So
I
the
love that.
mistakes inform the process. But when you start to take mistakes as a measure of your worth, that's a problem. As in anything, how we look, how much money we make, like our mistakes. I mean, we start to identify ourselves by a lot of things that really aren't who we are. These are the things that we do, not who we are. And if we start to mix that up, that's another place, as you had said, that perfectionists can really get stuck. It's an impossible goal. So you'll never be enough. If you have to be perfect, you're never going to be good enough. And as a friend of mine said it, that's like existential hell.
Right. It really is. It really is. So I know that you talk a lot about psychological flexibility. How does that kind of intertwine into what we're talking about here?
Yeah, so psychological flexibility is a core concept of acceptance and commitment therapy. So if I get a little scientific about it, but in short, it's developing the ability to be willing to experience your internal experiences, thoughts, and sensations in the present moment, in service of committed action towards your personally chosen goals and values. So it really gives up the struggle for control that everything has to be and the control on the inside. So it creates a lot of, like, acceptance is kind of a hard word. We kind of say more like willingness to feel. When you're able to open that up, let's just take again a sport example. Training is difficult. The mistake that you make and striking out is going to hurt you. And you can kind of try to control that and make yourself feel better. And if you go to try to do that, well, then you're not really focusing on baseball and you're not going to play well. But if you're willing to make that mistake, interact with it differently, acknowledge that it hurts, acknowledge that you disappointed people, tie into the idea that you want to be a great teammate or you want to be excellent at your sport, whatever is driving you, stay focused in the present moment of what's actually happening in front of you. When you bring those skills all together, that's where we get our best life. Because again, our life is now centered around our values. And by values, I mean things like honesty or family or, what's the purpose in my life? It's uniquely defined for everybody. Nobody can define it for you. But what's in my heart that would make my life worth living? And then what are the committed actions that I take towards that? Because a lot of us will have ideas about what it is, or sometimes we don't even have clarity on what it is, but we're not living in that way. Another common example, I have some people that are they say their family is very important to them, but they've got driven by, working 60, 70, 80 hours a week, and they're not there for their kids. And while they may have the value of being a provider, they've really lost that balance. Not that there's ever any balance, but I should say that harmony.
Right.
And so being able to kind of say, is this really the way that I want to live? Do I feel like sometimes we get the value of saying, well, I need to, as whether it be an older male or a provider or culture tells me that this is what success means. But in my heart, I want to be a dad and I want to be more present with my kids. There's going to be depression and struggles because there's a disconnect between my actions and my values. So getting clarity of values and then taking committed actions towards them ends up being our best lives. I've seen people who've really struggled in numerous ways, but once they've aligned their values, even though their situation was difficult, whether it be chronic illness or job loss or something else, their psychological health was much better because they were at least going through these trials with behaviors that were consistent to who they were.
Okay. So that's a lot. I just kind of want to say it back and make sure that I'm on the same page as you. So I think I hear you saying is that when we make mistakes and say that I get disconnected from my son and that feels terrible, this is an opportunity for me to reconnect to what is important and make sure that I'm in alignment. Because if I'm working so much and I'm not connecting to him, this is the part where I can either stay stuck and let it eat the view of me, right? Like now I'm a bad mom. I didn't do it right. I can't do this. I can't seem to ever get it right. Or I can take this opportunity to say, I hurt somebody that I really cared about. How does this make me feel? How does this align with what I want for my life, what I want for my son, and what adjustments can I make to be more in alignment with my internal compass? Is that kind of what you're saying? Ready to reclaim your connection after trauma? I can help. I'm Amber McCrea, therapeutic nutritionist and host of this podcast. Find my link in the episode description and book your free consultation now.
Not kind of, you nailed it. Thank you for that summary example. That's absolutely perfect. And if I could elaborate on like 2 or 3 little points as you said it, that can really help. So just like you had said, and then I feel bad. We get distracted by how we feel bad. But the way you interpreted that is that if I don't spend enough time with my son because I'm doing all of this work and then I feel bad, it's like a fire alarm. It's just saying, like, hey, check this out. So it's not the mistake and you're a bad mom and you're horrible. Like we want to punish ourselves for that. Just think of it as sort of like guardrails. It's like, oh, we're starting to get off our path and we bumped into the guardrail and we got a little dent in our car, but it prevented us from going off the cliff if we respond in the right way, which is, of course, what do we want to do? Get back on the road. So you might say, hey, buddy, let's take some time this weekend. I know I've been really busy and let's go to the comic convention or let's go play ball or let's go to the beach. Like you make the correction and you get back in line with your values and you bump on a guardrail a little bit later. But if we're responding to our mistakes in that way as guardrails, then we live our best life. It's like when we start to beat ourselves up and define ourselves to those mistakes that we actually fall off the cliff.
Yeah, I love that you mentioned that. I love the guardrails because I think of bowling and the bumpers,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
And if we can look at our mistakes or failures or whatever as those helping us guide us, like you said, that's when we get our best life. But also, I wanted to go back. You were talking about, the scenario I said with my son and feeling like I hurt him or I'm sad. I think often too, correct me if I'm wrong, in your line of work, is that when we take that moment of feeling, we feel bad, we feel sad, and then we either most times we don't sit in that and really see where we're feeling that, why we're feeling that, right? It can often turn to shame and guilt versus sadness and disconnect from what's really important for us. And when it turns to shame and guilt, oftentimes we turn to overcompensation and we still miss the mark of really connecting. So, in that moment, say that I felt that I was a bad mom. So, I was like, you know what? I'm going to buy him a new toy and make up for it. Right. That for me is skipping over how it's making me feel and the true root of what I want to accomplish instead of saying, I'm going to instead adjust my schedule and make time for me to connect with him.
Yeah. So great points that I want to shine a light on. In what order? We run into trouble when we prioritize our feelings. I guess let me start off there. You're doing a nice job of illustrating. For example, because you feel bad, you're buying your son a gift. You're not actually not buying it for him in that scenario.
Yes,
You're buying it for you to make yourself feel better, to relieve your guilt.
exactly.
And like you said beautifully, that misses the mark because that's probably still not going to really help. You're not going to feel better. He might feel like you're trying to buy it off. He's missing you because he misses the connection. You're upset because you also miss the connection. And the only way to fix that is to connect. And even that's not a fix because it still is going to be a dent in the car, but you're at least, like you said, going to realign yourself. And so we get into that trap when we prioritize our feelings over our actions and values. Now, I want to be really sensitive. I know people out there are struggling with depression or anxiety. Things happen and feelings matter. And I'll share it here. You and I just said earlier, my brother died last week. And so I'm actually having to practice this very much myself, where I've got the idea that I want to compartmentalize and still do my work and push everything away, but that would not be right. And my feelings matter. Like grieving matters. And because I love for my brother and part of that value of connecting with family during a difficult time, there's a lot of way that these feelings come in, but they're tied also in more so to that. If I just let my feelings go and I just let my life fall apart, then I just, cry because I felt like it, or even worse, I started to do things to make myself feel better, like drink a whole bunch or like ignore it and not go to the funeral and just work because I don't want to deal with it because I don't like those feelings. All these are going to move me away. So as I say this, I do care about everybody, how you feel. I just want to say that when that becomes primary, we're going to have a lot of trouble in our lives because we have four basic human emotions: happy, sad, mad, and scared. Three of them suck.
Yeah.
Right? So 75% of what it means to be human is unpleasant and they've got value. But when we try to live in this 25% of happiness, and every time we're sad, somebody tells us to cheer up. And every time we're scared, somebody tells us, oh, don't worry about it, you'll be okay. And every time we're mad, we're told to calm down. That's too much emotional control. And trying to
Yeah.
do those things when we should appropriately feel those negative emotions, we get into trouble. So what I encourage you as you put together well is if you're looking to kind of just fix yourself and feel better, take a step back and say, is what I'm doing right now helping or hurting? Am I moving towards or away from my values and goals? That's the new guide that I would love everybody to really attach to. Like really have this mantra that as you step outside of yourself and you're doing something, saying, is this moving me towards or away from the person that I want to be in the life that I want to live?
Yeah, that's huge. That reminds me of the happiness trap. I think he talks a lot about
Where it
that.
comes from. Yes, that's yeah. Same book genre. That's it.
Yes.
You're on point. That's it. Because it's this idea of the function, like our psychological experiences are experiences. We respect them, but ultimately we can't believe them, which gets me to my last ramble point. When you had said that you felt like a bad mom, I wanted to jump in and be like, no, you didn't feel that. You thought that.
Mm.
Like a bad mom is maybe you had some feelings of sadness or depression. Those are emotions, but it was your mind kind of saying, I want to be a good mom. So let me kind of point out all the things that are wrong and why I'm a bad one in an attempt to try to protect you from like doing it by accident or failing. But when you start to kind of beat yourself up about that and see it, knowing that it's in an area that you love the most, those are thoughts that can't be trusted.
Mm.
Nobody can trust all of their thinking. We've been
Right.
programmed since birth, and a lot of it has a negative bias, and it's our survival instinct that, while I got this turtle here for illustration purposes, like when turtles get scared, they go into their shell, and their shell is their survival instinct. For us, we have a brain that looks out into the world and looks for threats, particularly in the areas that we care the most about, because that'll hurt us the most. So you
Mm.
obviously love your son and want to be a great mom. So you know what? You're going to be plagued with thoughts about where you're not.
Right.
And that
Because our
doesn't mean that
fear is looking for that validation, right?
exactly. So you can't trust it. You don't ignore it because it is your guardrail.
Right.
It's kind of saying, hey, be careful of these things, but you have to rise above them, stay clear in your goal and your value to be a good mom, be sensitive to say, well, I didn't, like, accept the mistakes. I wasn't a perfect mom. I didn't do this. And then look and say, what's going to be helpful or hurtful? Well, beating myself up is not going to be helpful, going into depression, feeling shame. And we might do that to kind of more validate and tie in. This is where the perfectionists are. If I hate mistakes and they are intolerable. And that's my way to project to the world how perfectionistic I am. Every perfectionist I've ever worked with says this. Let me know if you said it too. Nobody's harder on me than I am. And they
Yeah.
say it with a smile, as if beating their own butt is like something to
Right.
be really, really proud of, because nobody's going to push me how hard I push myself. There's an advantage to that, but at the same time, if we take it too far, is that really helping or hurting? And that's an honest question that moment to moment. Sometimes it helps, then do it. I was in the gym last week. I was kind of being sluggish. I started calling myself some names. Somebody came up and was like, you're a sports psychologist. You're supposed to be positive. I'm like, first of all, I'm saying it with love and kindness. Second of
Hmm.
all, like it's helping
Yeah.
me. And I threw
Yes.
up the weight and I hit a PR. So there's nothing wrong with me calling myself a lazy idiot.
Right. That duality is in that middle of the guardrails, right? Is that we can allow ourselves to feel and do these things. It is necessary, just not to stay there. This is why I say I'm a timer whore. I have timers everywhere because it allows me to accept, acknowledge, and validate whatever I'm feeling, whatever I'm doing, but to not stay there forever. And I think that that's so important to give ourselves that permission, per se, to feel what we're feeling, but in controlled space. If I'm not okay, I just went through something super traumatic. And I was like, you know what? I'm going to have some rock stars because I need some energy right now. Like, that is not something I would normally do. Those are not great for you. I absolutely know that. As a therapeutic nutritionist, I would never recommend somebody having a rock star, but I'm allowing myself grace in that moment to do something that I might not do in those moments to kind of be like, okay, this isn't great, but I'm going to do this to kind of help myself and allow an indulgence, right? Kind of like maybe not the same as what you were saying, but I do the same thing when I'm working out. I'm like, come on, bitch, let's go. We got this. We can do this. Let's go. And some people are like, that's terrible. Why would you talk to yourself like that? And I'm like, it's the intent also behind how and what you're saying, right? So,
Like you're hitting the science. It's called functional contextualism, which is really fancy. But basically what it means, and you're hitting the really good point. You're talking about psychological flexibility. So now we're moving from like sort of the values and committed action to the middle part here of like it's always in the present moment. And that like you're more than your experiences, like this here and now. And that's the idea, is that our mind is like a rule making machine. We like to know what's right or wrong, what I should or shouldn't do. And our brain likes to be efficient in that way to have these rules. And I could go on a whole nother tangent about how even psychology and science is kind of like trying to have all these protocols for diagnoses and like as if we could fit everybody into a box.
Right.
Every depressed person is uniquely different. So one protocol to treat depression for one person may not work for another because they've had a different history,
Exactly.
goal. And we have to, well, fortunately, science is moving us away from that. But even in our own lives, we want to have these rules of right and wrong. So we know the parameters. So we know what those guardrails are in a
Right.
sort of a restrictive or control sense. But to your point, if you don't like the rock stars for a lot of other reasons, on that one day when you needed energy to get you to a particular value, the rock star helped. So on that one day, it's okay. We could even take it even further. If you're in the woods and a bear is about to chase you, and there's no way that you can run away from that bear, but there's, I'm making this up, I doubt this would work, but cocaine is there.
Right.
And that cocaine will energize you enough to go. I mean, I'm not somebody that says cocaine like is a good thing, but in
Right.
that one instance, in that like in your entire life, in those 80 years of your life, that one time, maybe if that got you away from the bear so you could live, doing cocaine would be okay, and nobody would
Yeah.
fall. There's a context that is incredibly important. Is it moving me towards or away? Is it helpful or hurtful? Like you said, give yourself that grace that you're actually doing something that you might disagree with in service of something that is greater, in service of a bigger purpose.
Right. I love that. And it was an extreme example, but I think that it drives the point home that it kind of goes with those supposed to be's. Fucking those supposed to be's. It's being present and having that flexibility. What is going to move me towards where I want to be in this present moment? And oftentimes, like you said, we can choose that. And if we find that that wasn't great, we pivot. We hit that guardrail and we come back and try something different the next time. And I think that that's so huge. And that grace, like you said, that psychological flexibility for me, I relate that is the duality. We want to separate everything and have black or white, right, wrong. And like you said, it's context. What is happening right now? What is going to work for me in this moment? And being
In
able
your
to
value.
have that in your values. Yes.
Yeah.
That is
It
very
doesn't mean
important.
like,
Thank
well,
you.
look,
Yes.
I want to win, so I'm going to cheat and do steroids and lie. It's like, well,
Right.
no, that's not what we're talking about because I would like to think and hope that while you want to win, sometimes our values can be in competition, right? So
Right.
I want to kind of just put a little clarifying there. This doesn't
No,
mean
I
you're
appreciate that. No, I love that.
mean.
Right. Well, and that internal compass and kind of circling all the way back, that is coming back to connecting to ourselves.
Yeah. And going back to the perfectionism, let me throw this as a wrench in it because it's not always going to be clear. So let's say you've got a number of podcasts and work and it's a really busy work week and your son is feeling lonely and he's really missing mom. And now you have to pick one or the other. And you probably have some other things that you need to do on top of it. You have your own health and bills to pay and things like that. And now you're pulled in a bunch of directions. And you're like, well, I don't know. I value my kid. I value my job. I value my partner. What am I supposed to do then?
You're giving me
Notice.
anxiety. That's like I deal with that
Yeah,
on a daily.
we are all there. We are all there. And I was there, as I said, my brother passed last week, and I was there certainly this week. And I got advice from people saying, drop everything and you just need to take care of yourself. I had the urge to drop the emotional stuff and just grind at work. And whatever I picked, the other thing was going to suffer.
Mm,
I'm doing this dramatic pause on purpose because
right.
your values will come in conflict. Going back to your scenario of your son, your job, partner, and other things. When you pick one, you can't do the others. So when people kind of question me about having a work-life balance, I'm like, get rid of that word. That's never going to happen. It's like sometimes harmony. And this is where that context of being in the moment, you have to kind of say, okay, well, on Tuesday, given the work that I have and given how much my son needs me, how am I going to divide up my hours? And then on Wednesday, I can make another choice. And then for some people, it's a season where I have athletes, for example, where they'll say, you know what, in the spring, I'm going to really train for that race. And so I hit my racing seasons during the summer. But then come the fall and the holidays, I'm going to really kind of buckle down and really spend the fall with my kids and my family and make that more family time. I'll bring down my training. And at the start of the new year, I got to really ramp up my business. So through the winter until spring comes again, I'm going to put the other two down and really invest in my job. And it's a matter of like that harmony. And you're not going to be able to excel in all areas. And as perfectionists, that's where we struggle because we need to not only be, well, I mean, that's not true. A lot of perfectionists are perfectionists in a particular area. But if you're really being perfectionistic in everything as a total identity, then you're really going to struggle because that's just impossible. Like even
Right.
more than perfect, being perfect in everything is like exponentially ridiculous. And
Yeah. It's a struggle.
but
I love
it's more than a struggle. I don't know if you've got a spiritual following, but we're not Jesus. Like that's like the gap between that
Yes.
and perfection. And I don't mean to make fun of it, but I mean we'll often do that. Like I spent many years of my life being told and knowing that I couldn't be perfect and ignoring it and trying to be perfect anyway. Like I didn't allow the cognitive dissonance to come in to be like, I'm actually going after something that doesn't exist. Well, I'm different. That's I would never tell anybody else to do that. Anybody else out there? I got different rules for myself than I do for everybody else. Well, what the heck makes me different than the billions of people who've been on Earth before? My
Right.
pride told me I needed to be bigger and better than that. But again, it's all this idea of I need to be a superhero. I need to be great. It's all this way of trying to facilitate worth through my achievement orientations. Thank you for this therapy session. This is really helping me. But like this
Same.
idea.
Thank you.
But this idea, that's part of what gets caught up, I think, for a lot of our perfectionists. This is where we're again tying it back into the idea of we are what we do. So if you can again refocus that and say, like, the great thing about values are that we never achieve them. That's what's different from them from goals. If you want to be a loving mother, you never achieve that. You don't reach that and then have to set a new goal. You get the opportunity every day to love your son. If you value honesty, you can be honest every day. If you value world peace, you can strive for that. If you value forgiveness, if you understand what these things are, they're never achievable. They're process oriented. They're the how to live your life. And you can live that life every day, whether your life's going great or it's crappy. You can still approach it with values of strength, bravery, courage, love, kindness, generosity, whatever it is. And that's when people excel in all areas of life and in all areas of performance, when they know what those values are and they apply that because it's just ingrained in them. You have endless energy to do that. And when you're doing it, it just is a wonderful, wonderful life. And everybody's different. Your values are not going to match
Mm,
up with other people's. So respect that. Respect that you can
I
be
love
you.
that. Thank you. I needed this more than you know, so I appreciate it. And I just want to close on the harmony. We hear that balance and all of that. We try to balance life, work, home, all of that. And it's just finding that harmony because, like you said, we're not going to be able to ever balance. And so I love that reminder. Thank you. Dr. Eddie, you have been amazing. I absolutely love your energy. I love our conversations. Please, can you tell the listeners how to find you?
Yeah, thanks. Again, my mission is to help you, the listeners. And so if you just go to Eddie O'Connor, or rather dreddieoconnor.com, DREDDIEOCONNOR, I've got a lot of resources on my website, everything from free things like my YouTube channel, Mental Toughness in 60 Seconds. So as much as you can imagine what a challenge that was for me, like how I like to talk. So like 60 to 120 seconds, but I've got a lot of like brief tips and strategies for everything from performance anxiety to injury and rehabilitation. So like over 200 videos on the YouTube channel. That's a quick watch. And then I really have started in the last few years my Success Stories community. And it's a coaching program, but it's also an online platform to have me journey along with them. If you like the things that you've heard here today, I do a deep dive into all of them, give you exercises and strategies, and walk alongside you to develop your own personal psychological flexibility, to help you clarify your values, other strategies to improve your sleep. If I got perfectionists out there, I know some of you are struggling with sleep because there's too much to do in the day, but it's your number one performance enhancer. And so this Success Stories community is my life goal. So I encourage you to go in there, check it out, sign up, and let's start working together right away because life can be better. You can be better. You don't have to struggle. No, actually, I take that back. You do have to struggle, but you don't have to struggle alone.
I love
Like life
that.
is
Yes.
hard. Um,
Yes.
and your dreams are in front of you. And my mantra is overcoming the obstacles to excellence. So as much as I'm about performance excellence, it's not about the goal setting and being positive. I want to tear all that down because that stuff is what's creating the problems in our life. We have
Mm,
adversity, and there's a way to engage it in a way that respects our humanity, but then also keeps our values and our goals highlighted so that we can move towards them in the best possible way. And that's what my life is dedicated towards, and I'd love to be there for you.
I love that. Dr. Eddie, thank you so much again. And we are holding so much space for you and your family. And again, I just absolutely value everything, your knowledge, and just your ability to be able to have that duality and have those conversations and offer space and just the science and the knowledge. So thank you. We greatly appreciate you.
Oh, you're welcome. I appreciate the opportunity. And again, best wishes to everybody out there. Remember, these are skills that can be developed. So I believe in you and I wish you the best on your journeys.
Thank you.